Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Bean, Representative Byrd, Jonathan Johnson with Hopping Green and Sands. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. We have a brief, well, I'll talk about a high-level presentation of what the Stewardship District Bill accomplishes, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have or come back after public comment to address any questions. We are proposing to create the East Nassau Stewardship District over the approximately 24,000 acres that are included within the ENCPA. The legislation that you have before you as a proposed local bill is essentially very similar to what you would see with community development districts under Chapter 190. It has some additional features built in to provide for the complexity and the longevity of the project, but it is essentially a land-secured financing vehicle using a special taxing district of the state of Florida, not unlike the community development districts that are already located within Nassau County, and not unlike the other stewardship districts or any of the special districts that you see around the state. And we've cited a few of those: Lakewood Ranch, Ave Maria, Babcock Ranch, Vieira. There's also West Villages, which is located in Sarasota County. Coincidentally, all of those you would find to be on any particular annual list of the top selling, fastest growing communities, and that's in part because of the availability of a special district mechanism to provide for the orderly payment of growth obligations and for the maintenance of community standards. And that is what special taxing districts, whether they are stewardship districts, independent special districts, or CDDs, are put in place by the legislature to ensure that growth pays for itself. As localities make decisions about where and how to permit growth, where developments are permitted, there are always a cost associated with infrastructure, and special districts in Florida have a long history of being the preferred vehicle for providing that. A couple of things that we want to hit associated with this: the stewardship district does not replace any service currently provided by the county. All of the Nassau County regulations, all of their authority for growth management, for comprehensive planning, for building codes, for everything that they do remains vested with Nassau County. This provides a vehicle for this community, the 24,000 acres included within the ENCPA, to provide enhancements and to cooperate with Nassau County to fulfill the vision of the ENCPA that the applicant brought to the county and that was ultimately approved in the sector plan and is embodied in the first TSAP that has already been approved. So none of those things change. It also provides one consolidated point of contact, and that's an important distinction between how you might otherwise see the lands in the ENCPA developed. And when Charles spoke about looking at a lot of alternatives, what you might see and what you have seen at some communities like the Villages, for example, or Lakewood Ranch before they utilized the stewardship district mechanism, was the use of multiple community development districts phased in over time and multiple homeowner associations phased in over time. We believe the stewardship district is a much preferred entity. It provides one point of contact with the county, one entity to provide governance for that large community, and it avoids the creation of multiple districts, each one with five members of their board of supervisors, each one having annual audits and budgets. This will all be consolidated into the one district. I think I skipped one. We've heard a lot of things in the press and heard a lot of comments when we've been before the county commission recently, and so we just wanted to consolidate down that into a few what we'll call fiction versus fact. There have been some concerns that the creation of this stewardship district would enable the district to, in essence, absorb additional lands over time, to expand its boundaries to include those beyond those specified in the legal description. Absolutely not true. The boundaries are set in this special act. The act itself makes very clear that if there is an expansion or a contraction contemplated, it has to first be approved by the Nassau County Board of County Commissioners, and then frankly we would find ourselves back in front of this delegation in a future year. There are concerns that the creation of the district would cause a reduction in tax revenue to Nassau County. That is absolutely not true. Just as with other special land secured financing districts around the state, all ad valorem and other revenues that would come from the property within the ENCPA will continue to come to Nassau County. There is nothing in this bill or in general law that would provide for a reduction in those revenues, and I would hazard to say that if that were to be the case, we wouldn't have 600 plus land secured financing districts around the state. We do that because it is transparent to the local government. As we mentioned, It will provide additional services and enhancements to facilities, but it will not supplant Nassau County regulations or services. We've recited a few of those there, but building codes, zoning, permitting. I think it's also important to point out that it also does not supplant environmental regulations or other growth management tools. So the Department of Environmental Protection, the St. John's Water Management District, the Corps of Engineers, all of those regulatory bodies will continue to have the same regulatory authority. We've also heard concerns that somehow this bill will create a new town. It does not. There is nothing in this bill that provides for incorporation. There are several paths in general law to incorporation. Those, of course, remain on the books, but nothing about the passage of this bill results in the creation of a new municipality. We've also heard concerns that the infrastructure to be financed by the district will burden the general body of taxpayers within Nassau County. Also not true. It's very clear within this special act that just as with a typical community development district, the ability to issue bonds and secure those bonds with special assessments or other revenues is limited to the lands within the district. The district cannot assess outside of its boundaries. It cannot assess Nassau County property. It can only assess developable land located within the ENCPA, and the assessments would only apply to those homeowners who choose to locate within the boundaries of the district. It also provides that any bond debt issued by the ENCPA cannot become the debt of Nassau County. It stays with this property. We've also heard concerns about the eminent domain language in the Act. We point out that the language we have is the same language that's contained in Chapter 190 and Section 190.011 relating to community development districts. The district can exercise the power of eminent domain outside its boundaries only at the consent of and direction of Nassau County. It cannot do so otherwise, and that is the same standard that applies to other special taxing districts, both in this county and around the state. We've heard concerns that the creation of the stewardship district will somehow affect riparian rights or other navigable waterways. Also not true. As Charles mentioned, the only lands proposed to be included are the lands currently owned by Rayonier and being developed within the ENCPA. Environmental regulations continue to apply. Nothing about the creation of this act by local law will affect riparian rights or affect navigable waterways whatsoever. Here's the proposed timeline. You see where we are in terms of meeting with you tonight. Obviously, our hope is that with your approval, we will proceed to continue to work with legislative staff to get the bill in order. As you are likely aware, we worked on this last year with legislative staff. We received comments, incorporated those into the act that's before you tonight, and in fact, we've already met with legislative staff this year in the House and incorporated some of their comments already. So that's the bill that you have in front of you. We then hope that we will proceed through the legislature and receive favorable consideration by the governor. In wrapping up and saying thank you, I just want to make one point. I think there's a lot of concern about, and you will hear concerns about the development itself. And the sector plan has already been approved by the county. The first DSAP has already been approved by the county. In the future, as additional increments come online for development, those are decisions that will be made here in this room by the Board of County Commissioners. Whether or not to approve this local bill has nothing to do with whether and how the lands will continue to be developed, and whether they will and under what terms and conditions. It also has nothing to do with how they will be developed under existing or future environmental regulations. All of those things will continue to apply. The county will continue to make their local decisions. The state environmental regulators will continue to make their decisions as permits are filed. This is a choice, and here's how we would suggest you view it. It is a choice between how the 24,000 acres will be governed as a community. And the choices for us are to have one consolidated entity, this stewardship district, versus a piecemeal patchwork quilt of CDDs, HOAs phased in over a considerable length of time. So with that, I will just say we hope for your support. We would be happy to answer any questions you have now, or would love the opportunity, if you have questions after hearing public comment, to come back and address those.